Climate alarmists are using a natural disaster. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Well, climate alarmists are using natural disasters to push their own political agenda. Nothing is really new, but it is kind of disgusting, to be quite honest. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that humanity is having an impact on the climate here on the planet. I just don't believe any of the predictions that we're on the verge of a catastrophic failure or that we're going to die. That seems too much like end-time prophecy or, the cults that are waiting for the UFO to come and collect you. Don't worry, Greta will save us if you just pay more tax and sacrifice your quality of life. I think it's all bullshit. And I base that on my own professional experience working with modeling on houses to address the energy rating that they use. When you see how easy it is to fudge the numbers in these assessment processes, and this is a huge part of our energy contribution to the environment, you become skeptical. You really do. Okay? It's such bullshit. And there's one concept I want to draw everyone's attention to, and I will do that right now. Hang on, let me bring this up. This is the idea of embodied energy. You'll get people pushing forward ideas. Where is it? Here we go. You get people pushing forward ideas of environmental interventions into the economy, governments artificially stimulating certain markets, and your taxpayer money spent to subsidize certain things under, the guise it'll create jobs or it'll be green, it'll be good, it'll save the world. And there's never any assessment from the embodied energy perspective. And this is the sum of all the energy required to produce any goods or service. So the other day we were looking at fake meat. People will eat this stuff thinking it's good for the environment. It has tremendous embodied energy because, it's manufactured overseas, it's packaged overseas, and it's sent here. That alone adds to the embodied energy as opposed to buying it here in the country. Then when you go to all like the wind turbines and solar panels, you've got to take account of all of the mining, all of the natural resources, where it's manufactured, where it's shipped, the end of life, the whole cycle, cradle to cradle. Or cradle to grave if you can't recycle it. That's something that we really need to increase public awareness. Now here we have one. Lismore flood shows 1 in 100 year map is outdated and homes are not as safe as we think. Oh no. Yeah, well, let's have a look. Here's an old Lismore flood map. Here's the Richmond River floodplains. Yeah, this looks accurate. Okay. This is what happens, everyone, when you build in floodplains. There's a risk. This is why in Queensland, all houses in a subtropical environment traditionally were built on posts, on stumps, because you've got either flooding from rivers or you've got overland flow, particularly during the wet season. Okay, this isn't ocean levels rising. I saw some people talking about this on Twitter, thinking it's ocean levels rising causing the floods. What this tells us is we need infrastructure to capture this water, so it's not. We can release it in a controlled method. But that, you know what you need for that? You need dams, and you know who doesn't like dams? Well, the hippie greenies. Anyway, homeowners are being warned. 1 in 100 year mapping is now outdated, and people's homes are not as safe as they thought they were. Well, see, this is a bit of climate catastrophism. Catastrophism. My house is in a flood area. Corner of my block, just the corner of my block, is at a flood area, so I have a minimum height, habitable floor level that I need to set all of my bedrooms at on the ground floor. And that's affecting the height that we put the building at. But during the recent floods, nothing's happened. I've had a bit of overland flow there with water just not getting to the street fast enough, but I haven't had any flooding from the river because they built infrastructure to deal with that. So I guess the flood map is out of date and I can't build my house. I wouldn't need to build my house as high as I have to, but I'm going to anyway, just in case. So the severity of the Lismore floods may have exposed potential flaws in modelling for climate change impacts, with households warned that 1 in 100 year mapping is now outdated. Okay. Well, I'm skeptical of that. All the areas that are flooded here in Queensland are known to be flood prone. Okay? Back when Newman was in charge of the state, they were looking at building infrastructure to mitigate this. What happened when Labor came in? Chucked it out. Okay, this is what happens. This is kind of the problem of these short terms we have about politicians. If you actually want something done of significance. Climate Valuation Chief Executive Officer Dr. Carl Mallon, whose company specializes in assessing climate change risks for people's properties, so he's got a complete bias here, says it will reevaluate its ratings after the latest extreme weather hit the New South Wales city harder than expected. Dr. Malone said climate valuation gets data from global flood modelling specialists from the UK and Sweden, which also supply data to insurance agencies in Australia that predict where water will flow by looking at rainfall and land topology. Why aren't they getting it from the local councils? Why aren't they getting it from the people who live there, who've been through flood after flood after flood? But anyway, I'm sure United K and Sweden are going to be as accurate as the local authorities. This data indicated the recent flood levels in Lismore would be considered extremely rare, not just 1 in a 100 events, more like 1 in a 1,000-year events. Okay, this doesn't mean it only happens 1 in a 1,000 years, it's just the probability of it happening. This leaves us with two possibilities. One is that it genuinely was a rare event, and those houses were somewhat unlucky to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah, there you go. That's it. Right there. That's the answer. The other, or climate change is affecting the probability of these events, and this suggests that all risk management communities need to reassess their view on the likelihood and severity of these extreme flooding events. That's the one to make money. Fear used to manipulate people to make money. I mean, do I need to show you this? You're living in a floodplain. Okay? You've got to take steps to do it. There's ways to build resilient buildings so the impacts of the flood can be mitigated to some extent. But this is the reason why you either need to have flood insurance or you need to have money set aside for these things to happen. You need a plan for it, everyone. Dr. Malone said there was no question of mapping 1 in 100-year flood events used by councils were already out of date because of climate change. It's been confirmed Australia's already warmed 1.5% higher than the global average of 1.1. The physics are simple. As the Earth becomes hotter, more water from the oceans and land is evaporated and being held in the air. If you look at charts of, I've got to find this chart. Hang on. Let's have a look at these two charts. This one here is showing global wildfires. I know it's not flooding, but look at the fall in global areas burnt. That is decreasing over time. This is looking at the impact of flooding on GDP. It is decreasing over time, everyone, significantly. So things are getting better. They're not getting worse. It's the same thing with the bushfires here. We had a Royal Commission 100 years ago. The stuff they were saying in the Royal Commission is the same stuff that we're saying now. There needs to be better management of the bush. But then we all remember the images of the people protesting against backburning. And then there is where they're protesting it all burned a few days later. It's sad, really. Anyway, when a rain event occurs, there's more water that can fall down, meaning flood events on average will be more frequent and more severe and damaging. I just showed you a chart showing you that it's not. Okay? For every degree of warming in the atmosphere can hold 7% more water. So we already have an atmosphere that can hold more water. The map's already out of date. In the industry, that's a given, and I don't think anyone disagrees with that. Of course it is in the industry. That's how you make money. This is not good for new homeowners who often rely on these maps to assess risks to their properties. Last year, news.com.au began highlighting the risks to homeowners, with many not properly informed of the potential climate change impacts on their properties. Dr. Malone said people observing the devastation from other states should not be complacent. Some properties flooded in Lismore have never been inundated before. It's only a matter of time with climate change and the risks escalating. It's only a matter of time, guys. You're going to get done. Be afraid. Be afraid. We better lock everyone down. Bloody hell. It's fear. I mean, this is the thing. Fear sells. Fear gets the eyeballs. People are afraid. It stops people being rational. So what can you do to assess your risk? People buying homes are advised to get a climate check and to think of that the resale value. Insurance may be affordable now, but will it be affordable at the end of the mortgage? He said many banks were also beginning to consider climate change risks to properties and could be a source of information. It's only a matter of time before they stop offering mortgages on high-risk properties, he said. Dr. Malone also advised making a call to local councils, which could uncover concerns beyond the risks on risk certificates. Well, yeah, that's good advice. Talk to the councils. Talk to them. Councils may have more information if you go and chat with them, he said. You should be able to find it all online. Climate Valuation provides information about climate risks on properties with a basic summary provided for free, and I'm sure there's a price upgrade. Bloody hell. I don't. Milk in the fear. Shit, this really is that. And what does it matter if they get their modelling wrong? No one will care. What can you do? Can you hold them liable? In general, Dr. Malone said its modelling about what areas were at risk, even down to individual streets and addresses, had predicted which properties would be impacted by recent flooding. I dare say some of the damage is no surprise to the insurance industry, and it's a bit of a shame that people have been caught out with the loss of life when we know which houses are at risk. We need to learn from this, and it would be silly to go through this again. Well, sadly we will. Okay, because we're not building the infrastructure necessary to mitigate these floods. Flooding damages in places like Sunny Coast, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Northern Rivers, and even parts of Sydney had lined up with expectations. But Lismore was different, and Dr. Malone said it would now adjust its risk ratings to reflect the possible climate change impacts could be worse than flood modelers have estimated. So see here, so their own modelling was wrong. We could be underestimating the likelihood and severity of these events. Climate Valuation Analysis has estimated damage costs for private property across Australia will rise by a staggering 257% from an average of $7 billion in 1990 to $25 billion in 2100. This does not include the cost of damage to public infrastructure. Is this accounting for inflation? The hazards that are expected to contribute most to this increases are flooding, coastal inundation, and extreme weather, including cyclones. Dr. Malone also noted that describing something as 1 in 100 years did not mean it only happened once every 100 years. It means that it's a 1% chance of it happening each year. For a 1 in 1,000 event, there's a 0.1% chance. People are largely alone in this situation. Dr. Malone warned much of these climate risks will be borne by individual homeowners, and he believes people selling homes will increasingly have to convince home buyers they've made their property resilient. What we really want people to realize is they should take a good hard look at what they're seeing in the newspapers. People are largely alone in this situation. A lot of properties are underinsured, so won't get enough money to rebuild or refit their properties to the way they were. Northern New South Wales Flood Recovery Coordinator Mal Lanyon told ABC Radio's AM program on Wednesday that potentially thousands of properties were uninsured. We're seeing governments step back and say it's not their fault, Dr. Malone said, pointing to recent comments from Australia's disaster relief boss Shane Stone, that people choose to live in flood-prone areas shouldn't blame the government for losing their homes. What do you think, guys? Should the individuals have responsibility for this, or is it all the government's fault? These are essentially implying that people should be aware of these things. Well, yeah, they should. You need to do a flood risk assessment when you're buying a house. That's what the real estate agent should be informing you of. It's when you get to the conveyancing, you should find out for. They should do all the checks. While Dr. Malone agrees people shouldn't be moving back into some properties located in flood-prone areas and that other buildings need to be upgraded, he also believes that state government bore a significant amount of responsibility, noting state planning and building codes had allowed these properties to be built and traded. These properties got planning permission. Someone has been taking the stamp duty and rates from these properties. It's not appropriate for them to step back now when the property has been wrecked and is dipping in value. Dr. Malone said support needed to be provided for people to exit high-risk suburbs, or there should be grants so people can upgrade their properties and make them insurable. He said there were also lots of things people could do to make their properties more resilient, such as rebuilding with more advanced materials, using cement board rather than plasterboard, and solid insulation rather than fiber versions. Yes, but the problem is it's all more expensive. What they need to do is they need to change the National Construction Code, so a lot of the environmental requirements to have insulation in walls and have all these energy ratings, and they need to really ditch the Section J for flood-prone areas so you can have maybe just a single skin lower floor that you can open so debris doesn't get caught in it. They need to change the National Construction Code to deal with this. Flood-proof doors and windows, which have become popular in the UK, can also hold back water, while walls or gates around the perimeter of people's properties can stop water of between 1 to 2 meters high. Homeowners can also consider building floodable garages downstairs and locating living areas upstairs. Most properties experience small floods, but even if it's 0.5 meters, if the water gets into the house, the damage done is huge. Floodproofing measures would make a lot more houses insurable, and while they were not cheap, they would be more affordable than a wrecked house. Spending 50 grand on a protective wall or changing materials is better than having a $500,000 home basically wrecked, he said. Dr. Malone advises people to take a good hard look at what they should do to if their property was susceptible to flooding. Make sure your insurance covers flood, and then think about investments you could make in flooding. Did mean you'd get 0 to 1 meters of water in your house, he said. Let's have a look. What do you think, everyone? I think this is a bit of stoking the fear, but there are some good points about flood mitigation design, and the changes really need to come in the building code. There needs to be provision to allow this. You've got to understand we've got such a prescriptive building code that if you want to go around it, you need to engage professionals to write reports and do all this other stuff, and it just puts the cost higher and higher and higher. So no wonder people just go in and rebuild what they've done and hope for the best. Should this be the government's responsibility, or should it be the individuals? And you tell me. And if people are living in these flood-prone areas, should they get insurance for it, or what if they can't afford it? Should we pay for them to move? What do you think? As always, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one in the comments down below. If you're a fan and enjoy the content, there are a few ways you can help out. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon, sign up for SelfWealth or Stake, or use our affiliate links. Take care, and I will see you all in the next episode, everyone. You'd hate to be in a business that's got done by this. It's going to be tough.